In this tutorial, we will use the previously created engine graph with multi-impact synthesizers to make a minigun sound effect. Our final result will look like this. Firstly, let's create a multi-impact data file for miniguns. You can choose either minigun file 1 or 2. Or if you already have a WAV file for a single minigun shot, you can turn it to residual data and use it here. Add a new impact spawn variation. And disable modal synthesizer. I will change the amplitude random range to 0.2. Increase the play speed to 1.5. Its random range is 0.2. And change the pitch random range to 1. We can create a new variation by duplicating this. I'll only change the minimum pitch shift to -2. Duplicate it again, and change the minimum pitch shift to -4. This should be enough. Of course, you can add more, or experiment with different parameters if you like. Now, create a new MetaSounds graph. Change it to stereo. Add a multi-impact synthesizer node and connect all the default pins. Promote this to graph input, and reference our data file. Spawn start time range should be either 0 or very small. We don't need to fire immediately at time 0, so I change spawn burst to 0. I promote spawn rate to graph input so we can control it from Blueprint or C++. I will also change its name to fire rate. Update the minimum value and the maximum value, and change this to 10. Spawn count will be 1. We want to fire continuously, so spawn change to K is 0. The default strength is too loud, I'll reduce it by half. Since I've already allowed random amplitude in our MID file, I don't really need to further randomize impact strength here. Of course, you can use it if you want. The decay rate must be 0 too. We should sync the speed with the fire rate. We can do it like this. Let's test this setup. Time to make it more interesting. I will reuse the engine graph, which we created in the previous tutorial. This is one of the most powerful features of MetaSounds. I will mix the outputs and connect all the default pins. I'll promote on power down to graph input and change its name to on stop firing. Do the same for modal parameters. For this effect, I will use revolver object. Repeat this for residual data. Take a look at revolver residual data. The duration is too short. So change this to 0. To test this, I will temporarily turn off the multi-impact synthesizer. Yeah, we need to reduce the amplitude of both modal and residual. I will shift the pitches to 6, and reduce the number of modals to 4 to reduce computational costs. I want to have a faster rotating speed, so I double this. Of course, you can also sync this with the fire rate, but it's not really necessary. I'll increase this to 0.5 and power down duration to 3 seconds. Play it again. Okay, let's try the full results. There are 2 things we need to improve. Firstly, we need to make sure the fire rate follows the powering up and powering down duration, and make it less crowded on sustain. I will promote powering durations to graph input. Let's make it so we don't fire immediately on powering up. Add a trigger delay here and use the powering up duration divided by 2. The fire rate should be interpolated from 0, so I will use an interpolation node. Connect this to interpolation time. This is the reason why I divided it by 2, to fit this into the whole powering up duration. I'll use a trigger route node to control the target value. Value 1 is fire rate. Connect this to set 1. So after delaying, fire rate is interpolated to the default value. Set 0 should be triggered by either on play or on stop firing. Remember to combine unfinished triggers. Let's test our logic. I will increase power up duration to make it more noticeable. Test it again. You can feel that winding up and down more clearly. Now I will make it less crowded on sustain by reducing iEngine node gain. Add an interpolation node. Increase interpolation time to 0.5. And use a float value node to set the target value. At the start and the end, I want the gain to be 1. So init value is 1. I want to reduce the amplitude on sustain by half. So target value is 0.5. And set is triggered after the powering up duration. On stop firing, we reset it back to 1. Then play it again. Sound fine for now, but we can continue to improve this. We might add more layers to describe our minigun mechanics. The colliding sounds of bullet shells are quite common in most gunshot sound effects, so let's add another layer for them. Obviously, I need another multi-impact synthesizer for bullet shells, which means I must create another MID file. But to save time, let's view the MID file I have created for this effect. For modal object, I use bullet shells too. I also changed the number of modals to 4. This is to reduce CPU costs and also to make the final results less crowded. For residual data, I also use bullet shells too. For the first variation, I disabled its residual synthesizer. These parameters were chosen to create a wide range of variations. You can experiment with different values if you like. For the second variation, I disabled its modal synthesizer. This is the same for the third and the fourth variations. We do it like this to avoid using too many synthesizers at once. Also, this makes the synthesized sound feel less repeated. Let's preview them. Now, let's add another multi-impact synthesizer. I will use a mono node to reduce the computational cost. Change the stereo mixer to 3. Promote this to graph input, and choose blue shells. Add a trigger delay node to play after firing. The random start time range will be 0.5. Again, spawn burst is 0. Use the same spawn rate. Set spawn count to 3, and change spawn chance to 0.8. So on average, 2.4 synthesizers are spawned per spawning interval. Turn off spawn chance decay. Reduce impact strength by half. For this one, I will allow the impact strength to be varied by 0.25. And of course, no decay rate. Here is our final result. You can change the fire rate at any time. Again, this graph is fully procedural, so you can customize anything. This makes it easy to sync this with your animation or gameplay mechanics. This is quite a heavy graph. We have 2 multi-impact synthesizers, and the engine graph also uses 3 synthesizers, but the performance is still quite good. Epic also has a MetaSounds tutorial for Minigun sound effects. Basically, you will need 3 wave players to replace this node. Though one wave file can combine a gunshot sound and a bullet shell sound, you still need to use multiple wave players to mix the lost shot with the current shot. Performance-wise, I think a wave player only solution will have a bit less CPU load, but it's not as flexible. All of our graphs only use synthesizers, but remember that you can always use both synthesizers and wave players to make them even better. And with this tutorial, we have shown all of the current features of Impact Sound Effects Synthesizer plugin. In the future, we will add more tutorials for other unique graphs inside MetaSounds preset folder. And of course, when we add a new feature to the plugin, we will also make another tutorial for it. If you have any other questions or suggestions, feel free to contact us on Discord. I hope you find the plugin in this tutorial helpful for your project. And I'll see you again on another tutorial soon.